Welcome back to Her Unraveled Life. I'm Amy, your Christian life coach, and today we are diving into something so many of us struggle with: peace, that deep, unshakable calm that we all crave. It feels impossible to hold on to when life gets chaotic. Now, before we dive in, I want to be real with you. I do not have this all figured out. Peace doesn't come naturally to me. I still have days where worry, busyness, and doubt try to creep in. But the difference now is that I have tools that help me spot when my peace is slipping, and I'm able to reclaim it before I spiral. And today I want to share those tools with you. To kick things off, let me tell you about a moment just last week where I found myself wrestling with all of this. Welcome to Her Unraveled Life, the podcast for kingdom women ready to break free from feeling stuck, overcome self-doubt, and step boldly into their God-given calling without the overwhelm. I'm Amy Wadlington, a Christian life coach and spiritual mentor, here to help you transform your mindset and find clarity. If you're ready to finally experience the breakthrough you've been longing for, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. The forecast called for 3 feet of snow. 3 feet. And my fear, my daughters were about to miss the trip of a lifetime. The trip had been planned for months. Ireland, a dream destination for both of them, full of castles, rolling green hills, and adventure. This was their moment, their chance to spread their wings. And as their mom, I was so proud of their bravery. But as the storm warnings grew louder, so did the voice in my head. What if they can't make it? What if we get stuck? What if this trip that they've been waiting for so long slips right through their fingers? I wanted so badly to have peace about the whole thing, but I could feel it slipping away. The what-ifs were relentless. What if the roads are too bad to get to the airport? What if we get into an accident on our way there? What if the snowstorm is some kind of sign that they shouldn't go? By the night before their flight, I was pacing, glued to the weather updates, and feeling completely overwhelmed. But then I realized something. I was letting fear take control. And I know from experience that fear is not from God. So I prayed. I surrendered it all: the snow, their trip, my fears, and all those what if scenarios. I prayed for angels to go before them and for protection for their journey. I reminded myself that God's plans are always greater than mine, and his peace started to return. The next morning, we packed the car like we were preparing for a polar expedition. Blankets, water bottles, emergency candles, snow gear, you name it, I packed it. I made arrangements for someone to come and check on the animals in case we needed to stay near the airport overnight as well. And then something amazing happened. We left the house and the roads were fine. The storm didn't hit as hard as predicted, and we arrived at the airport with hours to spare. I hugged my daughters goodbye, watched them walk through the doors of the airport, and I just knew that this trip was going to be a defining moment in their lives. Looking back on it, it wasn't the circumstances that brought me peace. The forecast never changed. In fact, after they left, we got those 3 feet of snow that were predicted. It was surrender, letting go of the control, trusting God completely, and remembering that his plans are always good. And through him, we can have tangible peace beyond understanding. And that's what I want to talk about today: the things that steal our peace, like worry, fear, and overwhelm, and the practical steps that we can take to reclaim that peace that God has promised us. Because here's the truth: peace isn't about having perfect circumstances, it's about trusting a perfect God. So let's talk about the 10 things that are stealing your peace and how to take it back. Grab your favorite drink, a pen, and some paper, and let's dive in. Now, let's start with the 10 things that might be stealing your peace. As I share these, think about how these may be showing up in your life right now. These examples are meant to help you recognize what's going on so that you can begin to take your peace back. So, number one is worry and anxiety. You know the feeling when your mind won't stop spinning. Maybe it's late at night and you're worrying about your kids. What if they get hurt? What if they marry the wrong person and they're only 2 years old, but we still have to worry about that? Or maybe you're wondering how you'll keep up with everything at work and at home. Worry doesn't solve any of these problems. It steals your focus, your peace, and your joy, and it keeps you stuck. Worrying also opens the door to the spirits of fear and anxiety to enter into your life. And then number two is negative thought patterns. Negative thoughts can feel like a snowball rolling downhill, gathering speed and size until it's completely out of control. Maybe it starts with a single thought like, I'm not doing enough for my family. Then it turns into, I'm failing as a mom. My kids are going to grow up and resent me. I'm not good at anything, and I'll never be the person that God called me to be. Does that sound familiar? These spirals happen so quickly and they can leave us feeling hopeless and stuck. But here's the thing, those thoughts are not from God. They're lies meant to keep you from stepping into the freedom and the purpose that He has for you, and they're meant to still your peace. And then number three is overcommitment and busyness. Your calendar is so full you can't even breathe. Between work, family, maybe church, and volunteering, there's no space for rest. You feel like you're doing everything for everyone else, but you have no time for yourself or for God. Overcommitting stills your ability to be fully present, and busyness keeps you spiraled into the ceiling, stressed out, on edge, and maybe even snapping at those around you. When I'm overly busy, I get overly stressed, and when I get overly stressed, I snap at those that I love the most and deserve it the least, my kids. And then number four is perfectionism. Do you ever avoid starting something because you're afraid that you won't do it just right? Do your family members fill the dishwasher the wrong way or decorate the Christmas tree not how you would do it? Maybe you're putting off hosting a family gathering or starting that business or ministry that you've been called to. Instead of moving forward, you wait and the opportunity passes. Perfectionism is paralyzing and it stills your peace. And then number five is materialism. How often do you think, if I could just have that new car or the bigger house or more financial security, I'd feel better? Then you get it and the feeling doesn't last. Chasing material things keeps you from focusing on what truly matters and it takes away your peace. And then number six is people pleasing. You're constantly saying yes because you don't want to disappoint anyone. Maybe it's volunteering for another committee at church, or helping a friend who asks for a favor, or volunteering at your kid's school. Deep down, you're resentful and exhausted, but you don't want to let anyone down. And then number seven is unforgiveness and bitterness. Have you ever replayed an argument in your head? Usually it's for me in the shower, thinking of all the things that you wish you had said, or maybe someone hurt you years ago and you still feel the sting every time you think about them. Unforgiveness keeps you trapped in the past and it stills your peace. And bitterness will eat away at your peace day after day. When you have bitterness, it takes over like an unwanted weed in your garden. Nothing good or life-giving can grow when you are bitter. Bitterness can lead to being quick to anger or hostility. It leads to self-sabotage, sabotaging others, and blaming others for your shortcomings. Maya Angelou said, bitterness is like cancer. It eats upon the host. But anger is like fire, it burns it all clean. Bitterness and unforgiveness will keep you stuck without peace like nothing else out there. And then number eight is self reliance. Do you ever feel like you have to do everything yourself? Maybe you think, if I don't take care of it, no one else will. You're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, and that is exhausting. And then number nine is comparison. You scroll Instagram and see another mom with that spotless house, thriving business, and perfect kids. Just want to say that those things don't exist. The house is not spotless, just the part that the camera is catching. And instead of feeling inspired, you feel defeated. Comparison whispers lies like, you're not enough, or she's better than you. It is said that comparison is the thief of joy, but it's also a thief of your peace. And then number 10 is distance from God. Life gets so busy, doesn't it? I get it. Between work, kids, keeping up with the house, and all the other responsibilities that you're juggling, prayer and Bible study can feel like one more thing to add to your never-ending to-do list. So you skip it. I'll get to it later, you think, but then later turns into tomorrow, tomorrow turns into next week, and before you know it, it's been months since you've spent intentional time with God. When that happens, it's not just your spiritual life that suffers. You start to feel it everywhere, like you're walking through days without direction or clarity. Decisions feel harder, your emotions feel heavier, and you start to wonder why you're so overwhelmed. It's like navigating life without a compass, and that peace that comes from God feels so far away. Okay, that was a lot, I know. And if you're listening to this and realizing how many of these peace stealers show up in your life, I want you to hear this. You are not alone. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. Life can be really heavy, and these struggles are real. But the good news is, peace is not out of reach. No matter how far you feel from it right now, there are practical, faith-filled ways to reclaim it. So now that we've looked at what is stealing your peace, let's talk about how to take it back. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're practical tools that you can start using today. So let's dive in on how you can take your peace back. Number one is surrender your worry to God. You know those what if thoughts that seem to come out of nowhere and take over, like, what if I can't pay the bills this month? What if my kids make a decision that derails their future? What if everything falls apart? When those thoughts start to spiral, I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and say out loud, Lord, I trust you with this situation, and I know that you are in charge. If your worries have led to fear and anxiety, bind up those spirits and send them to a dry, dark place. You can say something like, Thank you, Father, for your love, your mercy, and your goodness. I turn away from my worries and my anxieties, and I turn towards you, and I surrender these worries to you. I am so thankful for you and all of the things that you have given to me in my life, my family, my home, and my children. And I cover my thoughts, my mind, my heart, and my circumstances with the blood of Jesus. In the name of Jesus, I bind the spirit of fear and the spirit of anxiety, and I say, Go now to a dry, dark place, never to return. No weapon formed against me or anyone concerning me shall prosper. As for me and my house, we serve the Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. And here's what else works for me. At the end of each day, I sit down with my journal and I write out everything that's weighing on me. And then I pray over each worry one by one. And I imagine placing each of these worries into God's hands. Sometimes I even physically open my hands and release it like I'm letting go of the weight. It's a simple practice, but it's really powerful. And it reminds me that I don't have to carry all of it alone. And then number two is transform those negative thoughts and take every thought captive. Negative thoughts can be really sneaky, and I still struggle with them. They start really small, like, I didn't get enough done today. And before you know it, you're thinking, I'm failing, I'm a horrible mother, and I'll never be good enough. Why do I even bother? The best way to stop that spiral is to catch the thought early and replace it with the truth. For example, when you think, I'm not good enough, remind yourself, God created me for a purpose. That's from Ephesians 2:10. Or if you think, I'll never be able to handle this, remember, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's from Philippians 4:13. Here's a tip. Write down a few affirmations based on scripture and post them somewhere where you'll see them, like your bathroom mirror, your fridge, or your planner. When those negative thoughts creep in, read those affirmations out loud. There is power in speaking God's truth over your life. My free download, The Ultimate Guide to Go from Stuck to Empowered, has a full page of examples of biblical affirmations that you can use. So I'll put a link in the show notes so that you can grab that as well. And then number three is simplify and prioritize. Let's talk about your calendar. Almost everyone that I talk to says that they don't have enough time. I really hate it when people say, well, we all have the same 24 hours though, because all of our lives look different. I was a single mom, so all adult responsibilities fell on me. You might be married, but your spouse might be deployed or work 12 hours a day, or he might or might not be helpful around the house. Some people have personal assistants, chefs, and personal shoppers. Not me, but some people. The question is, are you saying yes to too many things out of guilt, obligation, or fear of letting people down? Maybe it's volunteering for another church event or signing up for a bake sale at the school fundraiser, even though you're already stretched too thin. Yes, we do all have the same 24 hours, but our lives all look completely different. But it's time to simplify. Take a look at your commitments and ask yourself, does this align with my priorities and my values? If it doesn't, give yourself permission to say no. Write down your top three priorities for this season, and that might change. What's happening in November and December is going to be completely different than what's happening in May when school activities ramp up again for the end of the school season. So, whether it's spending time with your family, growing closer to God, or building your business or your ministry, let those priorities guide your decisions. Remember, it's okay to say no, and no is a full sentence. You can't pour from an empty cup. You may also look into different tools to help you simplify, such as meal planning or time blocking. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to share some tips with you in a future episode on how to prioritize your time and how to simplify. I'd be happy to do that. Because I was a single mom, I created life hacks that really helped me save a lot of time. For example, with laundry, I stopped matching socks when my kids were little, and I had my girls help me put clothes away as they got older and able to do it. And I did laundry by person instead of by color, which eliminated sorting altogether. And then once they were about 12 years old, I taught my girls how to do their own laundry. It wasn't long before I was only doing my own laundry, and it was every other week while I was working instead of 6 to 10 loads every single week, which took an entire day to finish. And let's be honest, I never really finished it. There was always more to do. And I also created a meal planning hack where I just listed 30 meals that worked well for my family. They were easy to do, they were healthy, somewhat healthy, and I knew that my kids liked them. And so we would just go down that list and I would cook something different almost every day of the month, except Tuesdays, because we always had Taco Tuesday. And then number four is embrace progress, not perfection. How many times have you delayed starting something because it wasn't perfect? Maybe it's inviting someone over to your house because it's a big mess and it doesn't look like it's out of a magazine, or holding off a project because you're not ready. Here's the thing: God doesn't call us to perfection, He calls us to obedience. So instead of aiming for perfect, aim for progress. Start small, tidy one room and send one email, make one phone call and celebrate when it's done, even if it's not perfect. Remember that progress is still progress. And then number five is focus on eternal treasures. When you fill the pool to buy that new outfit or redecorate your home or buy a whole bunch of new Christmas decorations because everyone else is doing it, pause and ask yourself, am I focusing on impressing others or on what really matters? With eternal treasures, things like your relationship with God, your family, and serving others, those are the things that truly bring peace. This week, spend 30 minutes investing in something eternal. Call a friend who's struggling, volunteer your time, or pray for someone who's in need. Those moments will leave you feeling far more fulfilled than any material thing. Maybe have a family meeting soon and discuss what you really want as a family for Christmas to look like this year. Do you need more stuff? Do your kids? Of course, we want to celebrate the birth of Christ, and it's okay to buy meaningful gifts for those that we love. But I know that so many of us are stretched really thin right now. And I know there are a lot of Americans who lost everything a few months ago in those hurricanes. So maybe the holidays need to look a little bit different this year. Whatever is going to reduce your stress and bring you peace, that's the key here. If buying gifts for other people brings you peace, that's okay. Some of us are filled with peace when we give gifts, and you might be stressed just thinking about spending more money on more stuff. Both of those scenarios are okay. Just look for the peace in it that is going to come from God and do that. And then number six is seek God's approval first. So let's talk about people pleasing because I know how easy it is to fall into that trap. You say yes to things that you don't really have time or energy for because you don't want to disappoint anyone. You don't want to look like you're slacking or lazy, or you feel like you're letting someone down. Deep down, you're probably afraid that saying no will make someone love you less or think less of you. But here's the thing, people pleasing keeps you stuck and it steals your peace. It steals your energy and even your ability to live out your God-given calling. You're so busy trying to make everyone else happy that you forget that the only one that you're truly accountable to is God. So, why do we people please? Let's dig into this a little bit deeper. Why do we feel the need to say yes all the time? Is it because we're afraid of rejection? Are we seeking approval or validation? Or maybe we think saying no makes us selfish or unloving. These thoughts often come from a place of insecurity or fear. But here's the truth. Your worth is not tied to how much you do for others. You're already a fully loved person and accepted by God just as you are. Saying no does not change that. So, how do we stop people pleasing? How do we find peace in saying no when it's the right thing to do? So, number one is pause before you commit. The next time someone asks you to do something, don't answer right away. Instead, say, let me pray about it, or can I get back to you? This gives you time to consider if the commitment aligns with your priorities and if you really have time to do it. And then also, number two is ask God for guidance. Just pray, Lord, is this something that you're calling me to do? Or am I saying yes because I'm afraid of letting someone down? If it's not part of his plan for you, it's okay to say no. Number three, set healthy boundaries. Recognize that saying no to one thing means saying yes to something else, like rest, time with your family, or focusing on what God has called you to do. And boundaries protect your time, energy, and peace. And it's okay to start small as well. If saying no feels overwhelming, start with small commitments. For example, if someone asks you to lead a project at church and you're already stretched thin, offer to support in a smaller way, like praying for the team or helping behind the scenes. And then shift your mindset. Remind yourself that saying no doesn't mean that you're selfish or unloving. It means you're stewarding your time and your energy well. When you say no to what isn't meant for you, you're saying yes to what God has for you. Here's the most important thing to remember. You don't have to earn God's love or anyone else's by overcommitting or stretching yourself thin. You are enough simply because you are His. The next time you're tempted to say yes out of guilt or fear, take a deep breath, pray, and let God's approval guide your decision. His opinion is really the only one that truly matters. And I promise when you start living for an audience of one, you'll find peace that you have been longing for. And then number seven is choose forgiveness. That grudge that you've been holding on to, it's only hurting you. Maybe it's something a friend said that stung, or a hurtful comment from a family member, or maybe something horrendous that somebody did to you that feels unforgivable. Forgiveness does not mean what they did to you was okay. It means that you're giving it to God so that it doesn't weigh you down and steal your peace anymore. Here is a practical way to start. You can write a letter to the person that you need to forgive. Pour out everything that you're feeling and take full account of everything that has happened to your life because of what they did. But you don't have to send it. This is just for you. Then, once you write it, pray and ask God to help you release the bitterness and embrace the peace. Forgiveness is not easy, but it's so worth it. Forgiveness isn't something we just have, it's something that we have to ask God to help us with. And depending on the offense, it might be something that we have to do every single day and ask God to help change our hearts. I find it helpful to pray for the person that I'm trying to forgive. It feels really inauthentic at first, to be honest, but when God begins to soften your heart and you really do want your prayers about them answered, that's a sign that God is working and you're on the path to true forgiveness. Now, there are entire books written on this topic. It's not something that we can cover in just a couple of minutes. So, if this is an area you really struggle with, I highly recommend Lisa Turkhurst's book, Forgiving What You Can't Forget. And then I also have a day dedicated to forgiveness in my book, Into the Deep 21 Days of Prayer and Fasting. I'll put a link for both in the show notes for you. And then number 8 is rely on God's strength and delegate. Let's talk about those days when you're completely overwhelmed, when your to-do list feels endless and you're running on empty. You wake up already exhausted, and by mid-morning, you're wondering how you're going to make it through the rest of the day. If that sounds familiar, let me remind you of this truth. God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. But here's the thing, relying on God's strength isn't just about praying for help. It's also about recognizing the patterns in our lives that keep us trying to carry it all on our own. Sometimes our tendency to do everything ourselves isn't just a bad habit, it's a trauma response. We've been let down so many times before by people, by life circumstances, or even by ourselves, and we think if I just do it myself, no one can hurt me or let me down. No one can mess it up except me. I get it. I've been there too. But let me tell you something, that mindset will leave you exhausted, isolated, and burned out. Because here's the truth, we weren't created to do life alone. We were created to live in community, to help each other, and to carry each other's burdens. God designed us to rely on Him and to lean on the people that He has placed in our lives. So, here are some practical steps to rely on God's strength and learning to delegate. Number 1 is start your day by surrendering to God. Before the chaos of the day begins, take a few moments to pray something simple like, Lord, I give this day to you. Guide my steps, give me wisdom, and help me rest in your strength, not in mine. When you start your day with surrender, you're reminding yourself that you don't have to carry it all on your own. It's a small act of trust that makes a huge difference. And then number 2 is recognize the false belief behind doing it all. Ask yourself, why do I feel like I have to handle everything myself? Is it because you've been let down before? Do you believe no one else will do it the right way? Or maybe you feel like asking for help makes you weak. These are lies that we tell ourselves to protect our hearts, but they only keep us from having true peace. Remember, God's strength is made perfect in your weakness, not in your independence. And then number 3 is start delegating, even when it feels hard. Delegating does not come naturally for most of us, especially if we've been burned in the past, but it's an essential step towards peace. Start small. Let your spouse or your kids take on a household chore, even if they don't do it perfectly. Ask a friend or a coworker to help with a task that you've been carrying alone, or say yes when someone offers to help instead of brushing it off with, oh, I've got it. It's not about giving up control, it's about making space for connection and community. We want to make sure that we're leaning into that community. Like I said, we were made to live in community with one another. Galatians 6:2 says, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. That means that we're not meant to carry the weight of life alone. Find your people, whether it's friends, family, a small group at church, let them walk alongside you. And when you're able, return the favor. And we also want to release the pressure to be perfect. One of the reasons that we hold on to everything ourselves is because we want things done the right way. We've already talked about perfectionism, that it steals our peace. But let me ask you this, is it more important for things to be done perfectly or for you to have peace? Let go of the idea that everything has to be flawless. Trust that God can work through imperfect efforts, yours and others, to accomplish his perfect plan. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to do it all alone. When you start relying on God's strength instead of your own, and when you allow others to step in and help, you'll find a freedom and a peace that you didn't know was possible. So this week, I challenge you to take one step towards letting go. Maybe it's delegating something small. Maybe it's spending 10 minutes in prayer before your day starts. Or maybe it's simply asking God to help you see where you've been trying to carry too much. Whatever it is, know that God is with you, giving you his strength every step of the way. And then number 9 is practice gratitude. It is so easy to focus on what's going wrong, the pile of laundry, the messy kitchen, the argument with your teenager, but gratitude shifts your focus to what's right. Every evening, write down 3 things that you're grateful for throughout the day. They don't have to be big. Maybe it's a kind word from a friend, or a quiet moment with your coffee in the morning, or the fact that you made it through another day. Over time, you'll notice how this simple habit changes your perspective. And then number 10 is cultivate your relationship with God. When life gets busy, it's easy to push prayer and Bible study to the side, but over time, that distance will leave you feeling lost and totally without peace. Here's my advice: start small. Set a timer for 10 minutes and use that time to read a psalm, listen to a worship song, or simply sit quietly and talk to God. If you're not sure what to say, pray something simple like, Lord, I'm here. Help me draw closer to you. The more you show up, the more you'll feel his presence and the peace that comes with it. So those tools aren't about fixing everything overnight. They're about taking small, intentional steps towards reclaiming your peace. You don't have to do it perfectly, and you're not alone in this. God is with you every step of the way, and I also can help you as a coach. I'm accepting one-on-one clients. So if you need some help, just set up a breakthrough session with me and we can talk through it. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought. Cultivating a life of peace is possible, no matter your circumstances. Whether you're in a tough season with your kids, because let me tell you, those warnings about the teenage years didn't even scratch the surface of the scale of stress I was going to be under. Or maybe you're navigating a high stress job. Peace doesn't have to feel out of reach. When we take the time to intentionally cultivate peace using the tools that we talked about today, we can face even the most challenging situations with calm and a steady heart. So, a great example of this for me was this year's election. Now, politics bored me to death most of my life. And then as I got older, it started to really stress me out. I'm a peacemaker by nature. I don't like conflict. As an Enneagram 9, I'm wired to avoid conflicts at all costs. But my Enneagram does not define me, God does. This year, something shifted for me. For the first time, I wasn't stressed about the election at all. I wasn't overwhelmed by the conflict or the noise in the media. Instead, I was actually fascinated by what was happening. I found myself interested in the news, listening to podcasts, and genuinely engaging in what was going on, not because the election itself was less stressful. If anything, it was actually more conflict filled than ever before, but because I had changed. I wasn't worried about people pleasing anymore. In the past, for nearly 8 years, I was so afraid of what would happen if people who disagreed with me found out who I supported. I felt scared to speak up and worried about their reactions. But this year, I felt fully educated, confident, and grounded in what I believed. I knew what was at stake, and I refused to let fear or intimidation hold me back. I will not live in fear. I will not be silenced, and I will stand boldly for the future of this nation and, more importantly, for the futures of my daughters. I had cultivated peace in my life. I knew who I was, what I stood for, and what my values and beliefs were. There were no double-mindedness, no wavering, and because my life wasn't overflowing with overwhelm and chaos, I could approach this season with clarity, confidence, and a heart full of gratitude. So, what changed? What made the difference for me? I leaned into gratitude, thanking God that we live in a nation where we still have freedom, where we have free speech, even though the enemy is trying to silence the truth, and we have the right to vote. And then I surrendered my worries to God. When thoughts of the future tried to creep in and make me anxious, I reminded myself that God is still on the throne, no matter the outcome. And I stopped worrying about what other people thought. Instead of trying to please everyone or avoid conflict, I stood firm in my values, trusting God to handle the rest. Even when my mind wandered to the worst case scenarios, I stayed at peace because I knew without a doubt that no matter what happened, me and my household would be okay. Why? Because we serve the Lord. So, as we close, I want to remind you that peace isn't about perfect circumstances. It's about trusting a perfect God. When you cultivate peace through gratitude, surrender, and confidence in your own values, you will find yourself standing firm, even in the middle of life storms. Whether it's raising teenagers, facing a chaotic election season, just going to work every day, or feeling like you don't have enough time, just navigating daily stresses like work and laundry, the tools that we've talked about today can help you stay grounded. You've got this because He has got you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to dive into next week's episode where we're going to talk about 5 unexpected or surprising things that might be stealing your peace. Until then, hold on to this truth. God is still on the throne. He loves you, and He is walking this journey with you every step of the way. Until next time. That's it for today, friends. Before you go, I just want to say, if this podcast has blessed you, the best way to thank me is to leave a written review over on Apple Podcasts or give it a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And don't forget to hit follow so you never miss an episode. The other thing you can do is share it with a friend. Not only does this bless me, but you're helping spread this message to someone else who might need to hear it. And hey, before we wrap up, let me remind you of something really important. You have come so far. Look at how much you've grown. There hasn't been one challenge you haven't overcome. You are strong, capable, and so gifted. God has an incredible purpose and plan for your life. Remember, you are a daughter of the one true King. You are His masterpiece, and your story has the power to inspire others. Be proud of the woman you are and the one you are becoming. And don't forget, you didn't go through everything you've gone through for nothing. These tests will become your testimony. Your mess will become your message. You were born for such a time as this. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Until next time, friend.